Little Red Riding Hood, a story by Perrault. When you hear this sound, it's time to turn the page. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who was called Little Red Riding Hood because she often wore a bright red cape and hood. She and her mother lived in a little house near the edge of the forest. One bright sunny day, Little Red Riding Hood was outside playing when her mother called. "Please go to Grandmother's house and take a basket of goodies." Then her mother reminded her not to stop along the way and not to talk to anyone, but to go straight to Grandmother's. Little Red Riding Hood took the basket and waved goodbye to her mother. As she skipped along the path through the forest, she heard the birds singing and watched the little animals scurrying about. Chipmunks and squirrels were collecting nuts. Rabbits were nibbling leaves and grass. Seeing some beautiful flowers growing beside the path, Little Red Riding Hood stopped for just a minute to pick some for her grandmother. Suddenly, a wolf appeared. In a loud voice that frightened Little Red Riding Hood, the wolf said that he was hungry and asked for something to eat. The little girl was very polite and told him that the goodies in the basket were for her grandmother. Then she gathered up her basket and flowers and hurried through the forest as fast as her legs could carry her. Now the wolf knew that Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother lived on the other side of the forest. He also knew a short way to get there. So he hurried through the trees to get to the little house before Little Red Riding Hood. In a very short time he arrived at the path to Grandmother's house. Over the hill he could see the roof and chimney. When he got to the house, the hungry wolf knocked on the door. Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother opened it. The wolf rushed in and tied her up. How frightened she was. Then he put on one of her nightgowns, her nightcap, and her glasses. He was ready to get into Grandmother's bed just as the little girl opened the door. Little Red Riding Hood had hurried along the path in the forest, carrying the basket and flowers for her grandmother. She had no idea that the wolf had decided to go to Grandmother's house too, or that he knew a short way through the trees. So when she got to the little house, she opened the door to go in just as the wolf hopped into her grandmother's bed. The wolf, trying to make his voice sound like Grandmother's, called, "Come in, my dear." Red Riding Hood was surprised to see her grandmother in bed. "Come closer, my dear," said the wolf. She did, and then she said, "Grandmother, what big ears you have." "The better to hear you with, my dear," answered the wolf. "Grandmother, what big eyes you have." "The better to see you with," said the wolf. "Grandmother, what big teeth you have." Then the wolf remembered how hungry he was. He jumped out of bed and growled, the better to eat you with, my dear." Little Red Riding Hood was very frightened. She screamed for help. The animals in the forest heard her cries, and one of them went for help to a woodman working nearby. He had been cutting trees into firewood with a long, sharp axe. He immediately stopped what he was doing and ran toward the grandmother's cottage. The woodman dashed into the house, still carrying his axe. He struck the wolf a mighty blow, which made him fall to the floor. Then he untied the grandmother, who quickly ran to the little girl and wiped her tears away. They both thanked the woodman for saving their lives. Later that day, Little Red Riding Hood went back home to her mother. She no longer had to worry about meeting the wolf in the forest. Instead, she could enjoy the small animals that she met, the chipmunks and squirrels and rabbits. She could enjoy listening to the singing of the birds and admire the flowers that grew by the path. And Little Red Riding Hood promised her mother that she would never again stop to pick flowers or to talk to strangers on her way to her grandmother's house.